in 3 years with Colorado. This is a guy who signed a huge contract with the Rockies, and people figured, oh my gosh, he's going to Colorado, and he is going to go off because it's altitude, right? Not only has he gotten worse, he has been arguably the worst baseball player not named Chris Davis in the last 3 years. He has a negative 3.2 WAR. If he had a positive 3.2 WAR while making the 45 million he's made in those 3 years, we would still be talking about how bad he is. What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It is time for another edition of the Changeup, our weekly baseball podcast. Myself, you can find me at First Report, FERST Report. My co-host, Bryanna Winner, you can find her on Twitter at BWinner12. Bryanna, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, and I'm excited just because of what we're seeing in spring training, and I'm ready for the season to start in 3 weeks.
Yeah, about that. I'm never really good with knowing, except for February. I know February has 28 days, but every other one I don't do that sing song, so I don't know if there's 30 days or 31. But I do know April 1st we will have opening day. Well, I shouldn't say it that way. Let me knock on wood and say hopefully April 1st we will have baseball for opening day. But we are cruising along here, spring training getting closer and closer. No crazy things. I mean, we've had, some players obviously have missed some time. Bryanna's own pitching coach, Matt Wise, had some COVID situation, but he's back. He's ready to roll. Even Aaron Boone had a bit of I think it was open heart. He is already back in the dugout. So everything going forward, we're looking like we are going to be playing 162 games. And to kind of add on to that, some other news in terms of outdoor stadiums. We'll get to that in a bit. Plenty to get to, including, of course, the National League Central discussion. But before we get into all that, let's go over kind of the last bit of news and notes. I don't think there's a ton more players out there available. Maybe the last big ones to sign on. Jackie Bradley Jr., speaking of the National League Central, going to the Milwaukee Brewers, 2 years, $24 million. Obviously, Jackie Bradley spent his entire career up until this point with the Boston Red Sox, won a couple championships with them. He will be 31 heading into this year. Last year, obviously a shortened season, had a career best 283 batting average coupled with a 364 on base. I think the Brewers have a really good outfield now with Lorenzo Cain and obviously Christian Yelich. We shall see. Jackie Bradley Jr. joins the fray. Bryanna, what are your thoughts on Jackie Bradley heading to the Brew Crew?
I mean, after what we've seen from the Red Sox the last few years, he's traded up. I'm sorry, but he traded up. And I mean, considering who the Red Sox are getting, like they've got Kike Hernandez, among a few others, but I think he just needed a change. I think he just needed a change out of that division. Obviously, this division that he just went to is not the greatest, but he's got another chance. And obviously, we'll talk about where we feel the National League Central is going to go.
Yeah. And in terms of the division, it won't be as division centric as last year where, 60% of your games are against divisional opponents. It'll be a little more normal, I would say, this year, but still you're going to have to go for Jackie Bradley. I think it will help him when you're going to, Great American Ballpark, which is a very hitter friendly park. You're going to have, 10, 15 games against the Pirates, which we'll get to in a bit, and it won't be pretty. So that'll be nice for him. And like we said, this division is hardly the AL East when it comes to flamethrowers and things like that. So Jackie Bradley heading to Milwaukee to, help a really good team get even better. Our least favorite, we'll say our least favorite team on this podcast, the Houston Astros.
It's a close.
It is close.
The other team is very close.
Yeah. And, the Dodgers are right there. But, for the sake of the fact that, the Astros were cheaters, we know that. We will make them the hated ones. But they do sign Jake Odorizzi. This is an interesting one. 2 years, $20.5 million. There is an option for a third year. Plenty of incentives in there. This is interesting. Obviously, Framber Valdez for the Astros. He's going to be out. Will he have surgery and miss the entire year? That is apparently still up in the air. Best case scenario, he's missing almost 2 months, more than likely, even if he doesn't get surgery. So that's not great. Obviously, Justin Verlander is a bit of a question mark coming off of Tommy John. That's not exactly cut and dry. He'll be ready to roll right away. Jake Odorizzi, we go back to 2019. He was really good with the Twins. Really good. Was an all-star last year. Only 4 starts, was really bad. And honestly, if you look at his stats, you look at his career line, that is unfortunately more likely what you're going to get. You're going to get an ERA over 4, probably 4.5. And now he's going to Houston, which is a very small ballpark, very hitter friendly. It's interesting. The Astros need warm bodies. They need major league arms. Jake Odorizzi is that. I don't think this is something that is going to push this team to the brink, but as much as I hate them, this is still for me a team that's very close with that lineup. One of the best lineups in baseball, the pitching staff, a big question mark, Greinke, and really nobody else. What are your thoughts? Obviously, this is close to home for you in the American League West, but your thoughts on the Astros bringing in Jake Odorizzi?
Well, first, his deal also has performance bonuses, so we'll see how that one goes. But I mean, he's going from one division where you've got 2 teams that are really up there and the rest not, and then going to a division where it's really a 3-team race. I mean, the Mariners, you could say, could be in it. Obviously, the Rangers are just completely out of it at this point. But really, it's a 3-team race as we saw last year. Like you said, their rotation is missing some starters, with Valdez with his broken finger. Verlander, I saw, is going to be sidelined for a little bit because of the Tommy John surgery that he had last year, which nobody thought was really actually happening because they didn't know what it was in the beginning. And I remember that because we were arguing about it. So, I mean, he's going to have his work cut out for him in this, not only this division, but in this lineup for the time being. He's probably he may get kicked out once Valdez and Verlander come back.
I think that would be great for the Astros. I mean, they obviously, it would be a lot of dead money for them, but they would obviously be in a situation where if that would happen, they're pretty good in terms of the arms available to them. But the Astros, for them, I agree with you in terms, and I believe, yes, it'll be next week that we talk American League West. And that is, not to spoil anything, but I agree. I think the 3-team race, a lot of what's going to happen, the Mariners maybe a month ago, possibly could maybe say something, but I think what's gone down with their, the whole Mather situation, I think there's a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths there. We'll see how that goes, but can't wait to talk about the American League West next week. That'll be very interesting. I know Bryanna will be fired up for that one.
With the American League West, though, I mean, we've talked about the Angels, we've talked about Houston, we've talked about Mariners. That entire division is like scandal friendly at this point. Obviously, Red Sox have had their scandals, but the AL West is like scandal central from these last few years.
That's a great
and I really
call.
Don't want it to be.
That's a great call because, I was just thinking like, oh, you know what, maybe the A's haven't had one, but I'll throw in the and I don't know if it was a scandal, but it was last year. Was it Lazard and Cintron, the hitting coach for the Astros, charging in at each other? That's a great call. It is this scandalous division. That's
I think
fantastic.
The Rangers are the only ones that have gotten out scot-free.
Yeah, and I'll even go back last year. I don't know, like I said, I don't know if it was a huge scandal, but the Chris Woodard thing about, going swinging on 3-0, that was a very wasn't received terribly well by a lot of people. It was kind of backfired on him, but yeah, you're right. And or you can pull up Ron Washington, the old Ranger coach. He had a couple run-ins with a certain controlled substance. But anyways, moving on to really, I guess I will call it the first casualty of the year, a very odd story that will definitely more to come, we would assume. It is the saga of Jeremy Jeffress from the Nationals. Interesting. Jeremy Jeffress, great start to his career with the Brewers. Good arm out of the bullpen. Part of, with Hader and those guys, a really good bullpen group. Goes to the Cubs last year, pitches well. I thought he was even better than Craig Kimbrell. And this year, oddly enough, has to kind of settle for a minor league contract with the Nationals. I honestly thought it was a great pickup for the Nationals. Get an arm like Jeffress that for a minor league deal, very low risk, high reward situation. Well, we have been told that Jeremy Jeffress, his minor league contract has been pretty much, he's been released. And from the Nats general manager, Mike Rizzo, we have, quote, "It is an employment issue, not baseball performance related." Essentially, we don't want to speculate here. It got even weirder when Jeffress kind of had two, I guess, somewhat cryptic tweets. And it was, the first one was, "I'm not what they say I am. I'm what God says. I don't deserve this false negativity." So unsure what that one meant. And then also posted that former agent Josh Kusnik, quote, "ruined my life," end quote. And then Krusnik has not represented Jeffress since 2019. So I don't know if this is something going back to 2018, 2019. I don't know if this is something that has happened now. The people that are in charge of this aren't saying anything, and Jeremy Jeffress is very cryptic in what he's been talking about. But Jeremy Jeffress, no longer a National. I think a lot of teams will be wondering what's going on, because if it's something that, just, I don't know, maybe someone had a bad attitude, something like that, and he got cut, I think a team will go pick this guy up. But if it's something, look, like I said, I don't want to speculate, but it could be something more. And the Nationals found out about it and didn't want to get into a situation like other teams have with coaches and players and things that they knew about and swept under the rug. So we'll see your thoughts on this weird situation.
I mean, he was only signed to that deal 2 weeks ago. Yes, he was a National League Reliever of the Year finalist last year with the Cubs, but from what I've seen, he was released for personnel reasons, and he's had some issues in the past. So, and I also saw that they're not going to say anything else about this, so we may never know.
Yeah, I feel, if you, the way Jeffress has already kind of attacked this or responded to this, I expect if in the next week or something, we'll have something. I don't know if Jeffress will want to do a one-on-one, an exclusive interview, but he doesn't exactly strike me as the guy that's just going to quietly go away. We'll see, but at this point right now, it doesn't look like Jeffress is somebody who's going to be inquired about. Might be a situation where this is kind of an unceremonious ending to a career that, at least on the baseball field, was rather successful for a reliever of his caliber. Once again, obviously something's going on. And speaking of something going on, we bring ourselves to Ian Desmond, who for a second straight year has opted out of the major league season. Obviously the Rockies, they're in their own, sort of purgatory, their own self-laden misery, but
That's their fault.
100%, nobody's fault but their own. And a big part of it is, I think they're going to be really kind of happy with this. They don't have to pay Ian Desmond. Desmond is cited through a multitude of sources, whether it's Instagram, I believe it was Good Morning America or one of those talk shows going on there, whether, he talked about COVID, talked about family reasons, talked about injustices in the country, things like that. That's fine. And, I'm not going to touch on that, but what I am going to touch on is the fact that, like I said, for the Rockies, this is great. Outside of Chris Davis, Ian Desmond has the best contract in all of baseball. I mean, this is a guy who is leaving over $13 million on the table, excuse me, in 3 years with Colorado. This is a guy who was signed a huge contract with the Rockies, and people figured, oh my gosh, he's going to Colorado, and he is going to go off because it's altitude, right? Not only has he gotten worse, he has been arguably the worst baseball player not named Chris Davis in the last 3 years. He has a negative 3.2 WAR. If he had a positive 3.2 WAR while making the 45 million he's made in those 3 years, we would still be talking about how bad he is. The fact that he is a minus 3.2, you are literally paying this guy $45 million. And probably a big reason why you weren't able to keep Nolan Arenado around. You weren't able to spend money because you had it tied up in this guy. And like I said, for the Rockies, they're in their own, wallowing, and it's nothing to do, or it's nobody's fault but their own. But I think they get a break here by Ian Desmond not coming back. For Ian Desmond, this will now be year number 2 or 2 full years of not playing baseball. And like I said, when he was playing baseball 2 years ago, it was not at a very high level. It was at a very low level, let's be honest. So I don't know how this translates. I don't think we'll ever see Ian Desmond on a baseball field. And, as a fan of I want to see the best players on the field. I'm okay with that. This has been a guy for the last, when he was on the field those 3 years, I'd like to see him on the field as a Padre fan because he was an easy out and he didn't play very good out in the outfield, especially out in Coors Field, which is pretty important in those big alleys out there in the outfield. But Bryanna, what are your thoughts on Ian Desmond and the Rockies situation?
Well, before I get to Desmond, you said that they couldn't pay Arenado. They gave away $50 million to send him to the Cardinals. So I don't know what you're saying.
No, what I'm sorry. Thank you. Let me clarify. The big reason why Nolan Arenado wanted out of there is because they didn't bring players in, or they didn't have the talent to bring in. And a big reason why is because they put so much money into Ian Desmond. And, like, they're a small market team, and they paid Nolan Arenado his money. But they also paid Ian Desmond some good amount of money, and definitely blew up in their face. But yeah, thank you for letting me clarify that one.
Yeah, when you said that, I was like, what? I mean, maybe he realizes what he's done to the Rockies, but at the same time, maybe he just wants that extra year to let everything settle down with COVID, because obviously it's still kind of a poop show in this country with it. I wish we were in New Zealand or Australia where they basically got rid of all of it already. But I mean, a lot of players will still see it as they're trying to keep their families safe from COVID, because now that they're playing 162 games, they're going to be traveling a lot more than they were last season. So it means more planes, more hotels, more people you're going to be around. So maybe that was one of the reasons. But at the same time, they still had to pay $50 million to the Cardinals to give them Arenado. And that made no sense to either of us.
No, definitely not. But yeah, and for me, like I said, I don't know how Ian Desmond returns. For me, just 2 years out of the game from a player that really, like I said, in my mind, outside of Chris Davis, was the worst in baseball, according to the numbers. Once again, this isn't Brandon's opinion. This is according to the numbers. But it is time now for the winner's circle. Bryanna's time to get down to really whatever she'd like to. And I think we're going to talk a little Angel baseball today.
Well, we're going to talk about these stadiums first. So you're welcome to chime in whenever you want. Obviously, California was not allowing anybody to go in the stadiums unless you actually worked there. Now they're at least opening it to limited capacity April 1st, along with all of the amusement parks. So hopefully I'll get to go to some amusement parks over the summer because I've been wanting to. So, I mean, did you have anything to say on that before I continue?
For me, I think it's cool. It's a little unfortunate. I actually, when I heard the news, I went online to kind of poke around or look around, and it's looking looking like opening day for the Padres. Going to be close to $1,000 for that ticket, and for me, it's great, to have a chance, but at the same time, I don't know if I'm going to go to a game this year for certain reasons. Obviously, look, the prices are probably going to be heavy when you talk about the way the Padres are, a lot of demand for it, and 20% capacity. I don't think we're going to get to 100% capacity for a while, which is fine. But the 20%, I think, is, look, supply and demand. That's one of the few things I learned from econ, but you're going to have, higher prices in those situations. And for me, I can't wait to go to a ball game and just be able to sit down, have a beer and a hot dog, and not worry about if, I have to have my mask on or not, or if this person's okay with me not having. So for me, I'm going to wait until, I can, like I said, I can go to a game and not have to worry about whether or not my mask is on at the appropriate time, things like that. I'm excited for the fans to be there and to kind of hear the emotion of certain things. It won't be the same, obviously, but those two, bottom of the innings, or full count, bases loaded, 2 outs. The crowd would all get up on their feet, things like that. We won't have the 100% capacity, but we will have a bit of noise. So I think that will be cool. Obviously, for those fans that will get to go and are going to go, it's going to be a fantastic opportunity.
Okay, and now going back to the winner circle. So even though it's spring training where the records obviously don't matter, and even though they have been losing continuously, I mean, they're still proving what they can do. I mean, all of their losses have pretty much been like 1-run games. So, I mean, it's not bad. You've got Jose Iglesias already showing off with amazing plays. So, like the video that I saw today was him catching a ball in shallow left field and flicking the ball with his glove to Dexter Fowler, just throw it straight to second base. I know that you've seen some other ones. If you wanted to elaborate on those,
he's I think it's fantastic because obviously Andrelton Simmons has been there for the last few years, and I think outside of Omar Vizquel, he's the best defensive shortstop I've ever seen live. I never saw Ozzie Smith, so chill out, people. But for Iglesias, what I saw, there was a line drive shot up the middle, and there was, I think he threw, he made the catch and then threw somebody out, from his rear end. But he's very athletic, and I think he's going to be somebody that obviously is a lot cheaper than Andrelton Simmons, which is nice for the Angels because they have a lot of money to kind of go around, or through those players, and you're not losing a ton, I don't think, in terms of the defensive side of Andrelton Simmons. And I was very impressed with him. And early on too, if you're making plays like this in March, you'll make those plays in September, unless you're hurt or something. But it's really, really interesting to see a kind of not missing a beat. I thought the Andrelton Simmons move away from the Angels would really hurt that infield defense, but Iglesias looks like he is right there.
I mean, it was a great pickup. Whether it was a trade or through free agency, either way, they made the right choice in getting him as their shortstop, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be starting at that position, unless obviously he's on a day off or he's injured. And then the Angels are also giving chances to their prospects like Jordan Adams, who's attending his first big league game or big league camp, excuse me. He was drafted in 2018 right out of high school, so he's been in the minor leagues since then, and he's the number 3 prospect in the Angels pipeline. And look, the Angels pipeline with these outfielders is strong. Like their number 1 prospect is also an outfielder. And then obviously you've got Dexter Fowler now there after being traded from the Cardinals to make room for Arenado. And Fowler has basically become a mentor to Jordan Adams. So obviously you've got Joe Adell, who was the number 1 prospect last year, who finally made it up to the big leagues, but also had to go down just because he wasn't quite there yet. But I think we are going to see him play in the majors this year. I think Jordan Adams might be next because they are giving him the chance. I haven't seen Brandon Marsh yet. So, who I believe is the number one prospect for the outfield. But obviously, their outfield already stacked. So, I think he'd more play if obviously somebody got hurt, somebody's on a day off. But I believe we will see him in the major leagues this year. And that's all for my winner circle.
Yeah, perfect. That is an interesting situation because you're right. Obviously center field. You're not going to need anyone, a prospect to play center field for a little while, and that rest of that outfield is set, but it's also 2 or 3 years away from not being set. I don't think Fowler or Upton will be there too much longer, and those two probably will step right in. And we were talking about Iglesias, a pickup. I'm actually wondering if he'll even be the most impactful Iglesias. I really thought the pickup of Raisel Iglesias, the I would assume will be the Angels closer. We'll see. I'm sure there's a bit of a competition going on, but that's where
right
my
now
money
set to start as the closer.
Okay, yeah, that's where my money would go. So it'll be interesting to see which one is more impactful. Obviously, interesting times, and we'll talk in depth. Both of us will in depth about the AL West next week, as we talked about. That'll be really, really fun to get everyone's thoughts on that. Moving on to the Padre Report with myself, and in Peoria, it's kind of more of the same for the Padres. Look, we had Fernando Tatis first at bat with the bases loaded in spring training. Does what this Slam Diego team did last year. Hit a grand slam, no doubter. He's been on fire. He's been a little nicked up. Bryanna asked me why he was day to day. It took me a little, I don't know. Something probably just settling down. Something's a little tender, something like that. Nothing crazy. Fernando looks ready to roll. We, of course, this week saw the debuts of Blake Snell and Yu Darvish. Both looked good in their inning of work. And we're starting to kind of see the Melancons. We're starting to see even Austin Adams. I saw Austin Adams. The beginnings of that fight for what roles you're going to see in that bullpen. We also have seen on the offensive side of the ball, not just Fernando Tatis, but also Trent Grisham getting off to a really powerful start, pretty much picking up where he left off last year. And two young kids really turning heads. First of all, the Padres' number 2 prospect, I think number 8 in all of baseball, CJ Abrams, has been on fire, whether it's flashing leather, playing shortstop, or with the bat. He's been swinging a very hot bat, a couple RBI singles the other day. Very, very interesting. Obviously for him, look, as nice as he looks at shortstop, he's probably going to have to find another position. Fernando Tatis has that lined up for probably the next 14 years. So we'll see what happens with Abrams. Best case scenario, though, CJ Abrams, still only 20 years old, 19, 20 years old. He's a couple years away. So we'll see how that goes. One interesting one, a bit of a hometown flair. If you're in San Diego and you're a baseball fan, Rancho Bernardo High is one of the synonymous baseball programs down here. Obviously, Hank Blaylock and, of course, Cole Hamels graduated from RB, among countless others. One of the more recent RB alums, Gosuke Kato, was I think a second round pick by the Yankees about 3 or 4 years ago. Didn't go as planned as what he wanted with New York. Has found a bit of a home here with the Padres. Not expected to have, be on the 40-man roster, but has had a very, very solid start to spring training. Keep an eye on the hometown kid, Kato. That would be very interesting. Once again, though, the thing with the Padres, there's so much talent. It's going to be really hard to break into this roster out of camp. So definitely an uphill battle for Kato and definitely for Abrams. But if they keep doing what they're doing, they will definitely have a shot at breaking camp. So we'll see how that goes. Still a couple more weeks before we really get into baseball, for real and really understand, it's March 9th right now. No one's really going too hard right now on the baseball out in either Arizona or Florida. But it is time now for our weekly Negro League player spotlight. And this week it's going to be Quincy Troop. And Bryanna, how about you give this one a little roll?
Okay, so this ties into what the person we talked about last week, so I will get to that in a minute. Obviously, he was a catcher in the Negro Leagues, played for 9 different teams between the years of 1930 and 1948, but he did get a chance in the major leagues with the Cleveland Indians in 1952. He caught for relief pitcher Samuel Toothpick Jones, and both of them combined formed the first Black Battery in American League history. He also became one of the oldest rookies in MLB history at 39 years old. We think that still stands today. We would definitely have to recheck that. But he was an 8-time All-Star in the Negro Leagues. And obviously after he was done playing, he ran a rest home that obviously here's where we talk about where FM Manley, who we talked about last week, moved in. And obviously she died, I think, a week later, but he ended up dying in 1993. But I mean, to be part of that first Black Battery in the American League and play for 18 years in the Negro Leagues, 14 in winter ball in Latin America, and then a year in major leagues. I mean, he had a long career.
Yeah, so, and that's as a catcher. You know, I don't have to tell you about that.
My knees died.
Yeah, it's one thing to do that as a first baseman. You know, no offense to all my first basemen out there, but we're not talking about you know, that's a lot of heavy lifting, and you know, 1940s, I don't think knee savers were very prevalent, so there was probably a lot of medieval technology in those situations. Another thing that was really interesting to me, that in 1945 and 1947 he actually won the Negro League, American League, as a player manager. We've talked a lot about player managers. It's a lot more prevalent in the 1940s and 50s, especially with the Negro Leaguers. But for him to do it in those years, and obviously 9 different teams, that's something that, you know, definitely more the situation of the time. You didn't have people signing 14-year contracts. And in a situation, he was very successful wherever he went. And the best part about all of this is the last part of it, and not the passing, of course. At least the last part of his career was he got to get in the majors. Obviously, would have been, you know, better off maybe if, you know, integration came earlier. But I think you could say that about pretty much every African-American player in those times, that maybe if we wouldn't have to ever dealt with it, definitely we'd be in a better spot. But that's not the case. 39 years old, made the major leagues. Obviously for him, you know, it was a situation where a big check, you know, that's a huge goal of anybody, especially in that time. And to do that as a catcher, obviously, one last little thing I saw, wasn't only spent 1 year with the Indians, and even then it was a just kind of a portion of the year. But for his career, he did end with 1,000% fielding percentage in 25 chances, which obviously isn't a ton, but hey, going down, never having an error. That's something that I wish I could say about anything in my life. But anyways, a great call there from Bryanna to bring up.
It looks like Satchel Paige was the oldest.
Yeah, you know, I was thinking about that because Satchel Paige, when you pretty much, I think when you talk about the oldest anything, Satchel Paige is probably a good trivia guess. But obviously the situations of why these players were rookies when they were is different than why rookies are as old as they are now. You know, I think both Satchel and Quincy would have been major leaguers had everything been on even playing field. So very, very, and he was born on Christmas. I always have a nice little respect for people who are born on Christmas, because you kind of take a back seat to everyone else's holiday. You don't get to take full advantage of being in the spotlight. So little tidbit there. But moving on to the last bit of the show today, talking National League Central. This is kind of Bryanna's domain, with the Cubs being her team as well as the Angels. What are your thoughts? Who wins the division, and how do the standings roll out?
Well, obviously, after what happened these last few years, Cubs are not winning, and considering they got rid of one of their top pitchers to you, um, they're not winning. So I see the Cardinals finally overtaking the Cubs. Obviously, they were second last year, but they also had to deal with a lot of doubleheaders after COVID kind of sidelined them for a few weeks. But finishing second, I have the Brewers, and then third, the Cubs, fourth, the Reds, and then Pirates. No question about it, you're going to be in last. I mean, you suck. You're not good.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and really this is a situation. It's the ownership group. It's that those connections. I think Trevor Bauer, his $40 million he will make this year is more than likely going to be more than the entire Pirate payroll. In baseball, one of the biggest things people talk about is a salary cap. We need a salary cap, or there needs to be some sort of salary cap. While I agree with that to a sense, I think what's more important is a salary floor. You need, as a major league franchise, to pay a certain amount of a certain amount to your players, period. I'm sorry. We see it in the NFL. We see it in NHL. I don't know if NBA does it, but anyways, it's a situation where you're going, and the Padres were, once they got Petco built from 2008 to pretty much 2017, before they signed Hosmer and Machado, they were the team that was a $35-40 million payroll and blamed it on the small market. And now we know that was a lie. The Pirates are the same way. I'm sorry. You can't sit here and be a major league team that gets almost $1 billion in a TV deal and say, yeah, we're a small market and we can only make pay $40 million a year. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand $40 million is a lot of money, but in baseball, $40 million, that's two really good players or one fantastic player. So it blows my mind that the Pirates are there. Obviously, they're going to be last. I feel for their fan base. That ownership group should be ashamed of themselves. There are plenty of other teams as well. The Orioles are another one that are like that in terms of just not competitive. And I think the Pirates are the worst team in baseball. We saw it after, Joe Musgrove being sent away as well. I will say for the Pirates, obviously I'm going to take them to finish last. They do have a couple, young talent. I'll get to them, my players to watch, but the team I do expect to win, I'm with you, Bryanna. I like the Cardinals. I think it was kind of, head to head, neck and neck for the Brewers and the Cardinals. Nolan Arenado puts them over the top. I also think Jack Flaherty is the best pitcher in this division, so give them the nod there. Obviously, I have the Brewers coming in second. The one thing I will say about the Brewers, maybe the best bullpen in all of baseball. You obviously have Hader. You have last year's Trevor Williams, last year's Rookie of the Year. I'm still a little bitter about, but I've gotten a little bit over it. Their starting rotation isn't terrible. I think it's an average, maybe above average on good days. When you have a nice little 1-2 punch like Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burns, not terrible. I also like Josh Lindblom, a guy who came over from the KBO a couple years ago, and when he resurrected his career. For third, this is the only time myself and Bryanna are disagreeing in this division.
Had hope, okay?
Yeah, we'll see. Definitely. The Reds. I actually like the Reds to finish third here. I just like their powerful lineup. And I also really like Jose Castillo at the top of that Red rotation. Going to be a lot of home runs. This is a team that could maybe make a run at the postseason. I don't see it happening. And for the Cubs, this is a team on paper you could make a case is still the best team in this division. But I go back to last year and I look at that lineup and there's just too many question marks from Baez, Rizzo, and Bryant that just had down years. They add in Jock Peterson, who is another kind of question mark. And then we get to the starting rotation, which, look, when Jake Arrieta is your number 2, look, 10 years ago, that was fine. Kyle Hendricks, I like Kyle Hendricks, but he's not an ace. It's going to be tough. Craig Kimbrell has struggled a bit in the pinstripes of the Cubs. So we'll see how that goes. That's kind of the only way we differed there. We'll definitely keep an eye on that. I'll say this right now. For the Cubs, I would not be surprised if the Cubs, those 3 guys I just talked about, maybe 5 if you want to throw Kimbrell and Arrieta in there, if they all come out, have bounce back years, then all of a sudden we could be talking about, the Cubs as a division contender. But if I'm putting my reputation on it right now, I would say no, that wouldn't be the case. But we'll see. David Ross, another bit of a kind of a wild card. It was only 60 games last year. Technically, they won the division. Once again, with those 3 players really having bad years. I think it was Rizzo who had the highest batting average at 222. So that was an interesting one that they still were able to make the playoffs. But a big part of that was, as Bryanna said, a big part was Yu Darvish, who, of course, now calls San Diego home. So we shall see how the National League Central goes. Players to watch, Bryanna. What was your player to watch?
The only one I have obviously is Arenado. I mean, he's moving from the National League West to the National League Central. I mean, the West is obviously more competitive, but he wasn't able to really do anything, especially with the team that was around him. But now he actually has a team that will actually propel him into a playoff. I don't think Arenado really has even been in the playoffs. If he has, it's been short-lived, kind of like Trout's playoff career at this point. I really hope that they change that one. But, I mean, I see him actually doing really well in the National League Central. Yes, it's really only a 2-team race, but I mean, you're going to go up against the White Sox. You're going to go up against the Twins. You're going to go up against these teams in the Central that are actually like there. I mean, the Central in turn is really only a 4-team area, but at least this year.
Yeah, and the player to watch for me, I'll throw one out there from Pittsburgh, honestly. This is a guy, he's I think 30th overall pick, infielder Cabrian Hayes. Last year, his first bit of Major League ball, his first 95 at bats, he had an OPS of 1295. He looked really good. I think it was 25 games. So once again, it's a small sample size, but this has been the Pirates' top fielding prospect for quite a while, or at least position player prospect for quite a while. Obviously, they've been drafting at the top of the draft for quite a while. It's nice to kind of see some of these players come in. Cabrian Hayes is someone that I believe still has rookie eligibility. So if that's the case, he is my pick to win Rookie of the Year. He's probably going to be the only guy on that team that is worth watching. So we'll see how that goes. I have a couple bold predictions. The first one for me is the Reds pitching staff. I don't think they're really going to miss Trevor Bauer. I really like the Reds pitching staff. They can only do so much because of the division, or because of the ballpark that they're in. Outside of Coors Field, might be the most hitter-friendly ballpark in all of baseball. Great American Ballpark is so small. Maybe Citizens Bank Ballpark in Philadelphia is number 2. But anyways, we'll see how that goes. So they can't be that amazing, but the Reds pitching rotation, I think Miley, Castillo, Lorenzen, they can keep things under control and be okay that they don't miss Trevor Bauer too much. And my other bold prediction, this might get me kicked out of the winner's circle, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think what we saw last year with the Red Sox pitching staff, I think that's what we're going to see this year from the Cubs.
I don't doubt it. Yeah. At this point, I know Kimbrell's not that great.
Yeah,
Hendricks is okay depending on the day. And Arrieta, I wish never went back to the Cubs.
Yeah,
and you knew I was surprised by that one.
Yeah, definitely. I thought maybe, the security would at least get an eye on me, but no, it was nice. But
not on that one.
I agree. Kimbrel definitely on the backward slide, and Hendricks is a good number 3. Unfortunately for the Cubs, they need him to be an ace. Jake Arrieta was an ace 5 or 6 years ago. It's going to be very interesting. Obviously, the wins in Chicago can help pitchers, but there are some days that will hurt pitchers. So once again, we might see a situation where it's 2-3 weeks in a row where the Cubbies are struggling with pitching, but maybe not a terribly bold prediction, but something to keep an eye on there. Final thoughts, Bryanna, from another really action-packed as we get closer to the season, another great changeup.
Look, I have some hope for them finishing in third. I know they're not going to win. I know they're not going to be in the top 2, but I have hope that they'll be in the middle of the pack, but that's if their hitters can hit.
Yeah, I agree.
That's about all I got.
Yeah, it's tough because you see those 3, and obviously 4 years ago, it was maybe the 3 best, 1, 2, 3 punch with Bryant, Rizzo, and Baez. I mean, that was, I don't know if you would pick any other 3 at the time. And now it's, you kind of have question marks. Are all 3 going to bounce back? I doubt it. I don't think all 3 can. 2 out of 3, maybe 1 out of 3. One of them's going to bounce back.
Well, if it's 2 out of 3, I don't see Bryant bouncing back.
Yeah.
He's the only one I don't see.
I think Baez is the best option, or would be my pick to bounce back. I just think he is the most talented out of all 3, just overall athleticism and all of the above. Rizzo is in a situation where he's didn't spend all off season, at least as obviously being shocked as Chris Bryant was. A couple weeks ago on 2Bs on a pod, I threw out that maybe the Padres go out and get Chris Bryant to shore out the team and put him in left field. That was a bit much. And now the Cubs are saying they want to sign these guys and build around them again, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think you build around Baez and thank Rizzo and Bryant for all that they did, and then they can kind of go off. But we will see with the Cubs. That's a team that's very interesting. I'm as bad as I think they could be, I think they could also be good. So it's very.
I see Rizzo finishing his career there. I don't see him going anywhere else. I think he's going to stay a Cub. I mean, and you talk about athleticism. Do you see his picks at first base when he's in a full split?
Yeah. When I think of athleticism,
guys can do that.
No, you're right. You're right. When I'm thinking of the athleticism, I'm thinking of the speed.
I mean, he was the most consistent.
And you're right. You're right. But I think I don't think I think Baez has more athleticism. I'm not saying that Rizzo is not athletic, but I don't think he is as athletic as Javi Baez.
I think he's the most consistent of the 3, though, especially at
That's fair. I can agree with that as well.
Baez, I don't see bouncing back. Or not Baez. I mean Bryant. Excuse me. Bryant, I don't see bouncing back.
Say that 10 times fast, but awesome.
When you've got 2 last names with B's in there, what do you expect?
Exactly. 1 and 2 syllables, too, all around. It's like a haiku. But thank you all so much for listening to another edition of the Changeup presented by the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It is time for you all to go wash your hands and stop hating everybody. We will talk to you all very soon. Take care.